Hello everyone, this is meteorologist Amy Metz going over Hurricane Elsa. We have 75-mile-per-hour sustained winds. The center is now getting a little bit closer to Hispaniola, just south of Puerto Rico, and I do have a feeling that this track may stay a little bit more south than what we're seeing right now. We do have some winds in the forecast increasing to 120 on kilometers per hour. So still something similar to what we're seeing now with Category 1 force winds, and then degrading. And that would be because this track is interacting with land, that we're not seeing anything greater than this low end Category 1 right now in this forecast. But we'll move on and see exactly how this might change if in fact it stays a little bit more south, because the environment right now for Elsa, I'll open up some shear ahead of it, and we can see that there's smaller numbers, low bits of shear here. These would be considered something that is still going to allow the storm to grow. And the steering winds are going to tell me a little bit more about where this storm is going to be heading. So there is some pull of energy already a little bit north. And so coming to this level, we're at the 500 millibars, and I'll play out this European model just to kind of give an idea. They're usually very accurate in these very short time frames. Some of this energy is traveling north. So if in fact this low pressure center stays south of Haiti and does not hit Cuba, we'll see more chances for it to get stronger. But because we have all this land interaction, it likely will stay a Category 1 storm. One of the other things that could affect this would be some space weather, and we actually did have well, here now we finally have an R1 actually in the last 24 hours observed. This is very new. I have been watching this all day because I know there's a bright spot on the sun, this region here, that I had been forecasting and talking about perhaps bringing us some enhanced earth weather if this happens. So you see there's kind of this light here. We're looking at the sun, and in this coronagraph image, this blue one, the C3 instrument, we can see that some plasma has left the sun, and when it comes from this direction, it oftentimes will be traveling toward Earth. And in fact, we did have a response afterwards, a C-class and another M-class flare that actually just happened since I checked right before this live. So this is very new information, and now that there's an M-class flare, this could actually change the forecast a little bit, because not only will we probably have aurora with this here's an aurora forecast, more in the high latitudes, nothing that's likely to reach down to Detroit. I mean, of course, maybe it could hit parts of Michigan with an M-class flare, but there's a lot of more technicalities there to figure out that in the next couple of days. Looking at the speed there, I would guess that about 2 to 3 days from now, we'll see some of these KP values increase into geomagnetic storm values, which will in turn increase lightning. So I'll go ahead and show how the lightning looks now and let you know that very likely there will be more of it after this storm, the solar storm, reaches Earth. And now we're not seeing much associated with Elsa. It is a little bit weaker right now. These storms can tend to take some time to get the lightning embedded with them. So that's a good sign here again that this storm is not extremely strong. Of course, there's still some lightning going off well ahead just south of Hispaniola, so some of that will be crossing over with thunderstorms, and then some just near Puerto Rico right now too, a little bit. So these solar storms can also bring us more clouds. It seems these are some newer information that I'm studying now in space weather classes at Millersville University. And so I'll look at the last 12 hours, because this will then show us the time period before that first C-class flare from the sun, and then also the M-class. And we can kind of get an idea of if it looks like there's extra cloud cover that's coming in after that point, and not really. As I've been following this, I hear that there can be, and oftentimes I'm thinking now from what I've watched is that it will be on the day side. So just to get an idea, I'll look here And then I'm going to jump right back to the products from the National Hurricane Center with Elsa after I use this to loop one time and see if it did on the where the sun had been shining when that flare went off, to see if now we would have an increase in some cloud cover. And I'm not noticing much here. There is a change in the last 12 hours. But that's just something that I'm kind of keeping track of here as I'm learning more. So with the National Hurricane Center, we can dig into a few more of their products for Elsa before I head out of here and just kind of understand a little bit more of who might be in the zone for damaging winds here. Because luckily everything I see in the steering winds, everything in the wind shear patterns, it all points to this storm moving in this direction and having some interaction with Haiti. So for that reason, those hurricane force winds that we're seeing a 90% chance or more of in this center purple color, those will reach over Puerto Rico and then stop pretty soon after. So once that core of rotation and the center of the low pressure passes the land, we're going to see it quickly degrade. So there is some rain with this, but it hasn't been a huge rainmaker. There's not a lot of lightning. So luckily, it's not the worst thing to watch out for, but of course there's always concern with flooded roadways, any kind of landslides, especially on the higher terrain where some of these clouds might be pushing in and then lifting up more quickly. And so Elsa, I hope, does not reawaken after passing land, but as far as right now, I don't think so. As long as it does not end up in the Gulf of Mexico, we should be fine there. And so before I go, what I'm looking at here is different wavelengths of the sun, so basically telescopes out in space, looking at the sun with different filters on them. And here, I believe the 171 angstroms. I'm going to watch the video so that we can get an idea of where exactly that solar storm left the sun on the coronagraph, because that makes a huge difference in whether or not we will be seeing a geomagnetic storm at Earth and some of the other components I talked about, like the increased lightning or what appeared to me there. Yeah, so it was not even from this part of the sun, it doesn't appear. So if this happens to be that these storms leave on this side, on the back side or the far side of the sun, then they interact with us a little bit less. They're not as powerful. So I'm not seeing where this left. It could have been a filament eruption, which might be better seen in 304 angstroms, which appears like a red sun. Because that M-class flare just happened, I'm very curious to find out what's going on. So normally I wouldn't hang on doing this kind of thing for the first time, but I've got to see this. It just happened. And so we're looking at filament eruptions, prominences. It looks like there was a flare from this sunspot perhaps in this region here, but if we're looking just for the flare without the CME, there's another wavelength that would be better suited for that. So right there, it brightened. There you go. There was a small eruption there, but I can't imagine that would cover that entire coronal mass ejection when we saw the coronagraph with the blue sun. So yeah, it does look like there's definitely the flaring going on. They don't necessarily have to be associated with the same sunspot, and it'll make a big difference. So I want to see here too. And this is a good thing if we're not seeing any huge eruptions and the hurricane is not causing huge damages, because this will, yeah, definitely the big flare came from this portion of the sun. So that, I bet you, was the M-class flare with the C-class happening a little bit beforehand. So I'll be looking ahead at this, because with these sunspots here and the sun waking up, what I was getting at is that radio communications can go down. And so when there's big storms and people need evacuating or they need help or rescues, and then the emergency communicators can't talk to one another, that just adds more problems on top of the problems that were already there. So these kinds of large eruptions can really interfere with the dayside communications of radio waves. And so this kind of a flare, anything that we're seeing on this front side of the sun, this is the part of the sun that will face Earth. When the sun is shining on you, this is what you're seeing as it rotates around. If we see it and the light is visible from anywhere on this front face, it will definitely interact with Earth to some degree. And so that's why we saw those C and M class flares on the GOES X-ray flux. And as these keep turning, we could have more of those. So I'll just keep an eye on that. They actually had quite a high probability, considering, anyway, just 15% chance for X-class flare. So that would be a bigger player, something that I'll be watching out for and sharing more videos on YouTube about exactly what that means and how it can affect us. Because even people with pacemakers, they could actually have the pacemaker go bad inside of them while they're wearing it, and basically give them a heart attack or stop working from space weather. We have electronics malfunction, GPS communications, all kinds of these infrastructures going down when the storms get very big. The solar storms end up with C-class flares or large coronal mass ejections. And so I'll be sharing exactly what that means, how we can track it, and how it affects Earth weather, because more and more we're seeing some connections here. And luckily, it looks like, it was kind of a big one today, watching Elsa turn into a Category 1. I would just hate seeing when they get big, but this time of year, we're going to be seeing some more of these most likely, and they'll be developing here more and more. The water's finally starting to warm up. Sea surface temperatures this other day were just a little bit cooler in different pockets in this Caribbean Sea. So this is another reason why this wasn't massive or explosive right here, even over the open water. But as we continue to creep into hurricane season deeper and deeper, we'll see more of these storms generating here off the coast of Africa and getting stronger across this region as the water warms up. So let's take this as a good time to get prepared and remember what it means to be in this time of the year in this part of the world. So I hope everybody can stay safe and enjoy the weather. This is your weather woman, meteorologist Amy Metz. Go ahead and find me if you'd like. Also on Facebook and TikTok, where I'm sharing this information.